Iron that bleeds. Some interesting information. Vincenzo Mangini first discovered blood contained iron in 1746, quite a while ago, and that actually laid the foundation for what happened next. And the bleeding from the iron experiment was first done in 1884 by German scientists L. Leichte and W. Suida, I think that's how you pronounce that, while they were messing around with potassium thiocyanate. It would seem that these two are unrelated, but apparently over the many years that passed between these, over 120 years, this did have an impact, finding iron in blood, on this experiment. Essentially, the bleeding iron experiment shows the oxidation of Fe plus 2 to Fe plus 3, meaning it's losing electrons, which then binds with the cyanate ion, SCN negative, and of course this is a plus 3, so there's 3 of these that bind with that, and that is red in color. The materials we need: potassium thiocyanate, 10 grams, water, 1 liter, hydrochloric acid, I'm going to use 31, but you can use between 31 and 35%, 10 milliliters, hydrogen peroxide, 3%, 10 milliliters, and of course an iron piece. The reactions that follow, I have them here in a stepwise fashion. So initially, the iron, which of course comes from your iron piece, mixes with the hydrochloric acid to produce Fe plus 2 chloride ions plus hydrogen. Next, the Fe plus 2 that was just produced, 2 of them combine with 2 hydrogens plus the hydrogen peroxide that you put in there to form 2 iron plus 3 plus 2 waters. Then the iron plus 3 down here combines with the 3 cyanate ions, which I mentioned, to form Fe plus 3 or Fe3 SCN3, which is red in color and is called iron thiocyanate. In our methods, we're going to have water in this beaker here, and we're going to add these items in order, and that will be, the order will be the hydrochloric acid will go in first to dilute it, then we'll put in the potassium thiocyanate, and lastly the hydrogen peroxide. Mix it extremely well, making sure mostly that the potassium thiocyanate is dissolved. We're going to then put our iron chunk in here, this odd looking nail, and of course we'll produce the iron thiocyanate, which is red in color. Okay, enough discussion, let's go ahead and do this. 10 grams of potassium thiocyanate, pre-weighed. 10 milliliters of 3% hydrogen peroxide, pre-measured. 10 milliliters of 31.5% hydrochloric acid, pre-measured. 1 liter of distilled water, pre-measured. All set to go here, and all we need is an iron nail. But I'm not going to use an iron nail. I'm going to use an iron railroad spike right here. And this thing looks pretty good. It's nice and shiny and ready to go. It is made out of iron, of course, but this thing was rusted so bad, and I de-rusted it, and I want to show you how I did that because it's pretty interesting, so just hang in there for a minute. To clean up that old rusty railroad tie, I used electrolysis to quote-unquote remove the rust. This is the most effective way to remove rust and nooks and crannies for sure, but it's not always removing the rust. Some of the rust sloughs off because of the action of the hydrogen that's formed there, and it just pushes the loose pieces off. But what we're actually going to do is turn the iron oxide back into iron. This process is relatively simple, and just as a little warning, do not use stainless steel for the sacrificial anode. This anode does break down. It's the positive from the power supply, and the reason for that, of course, is there's chromium, and you can end up with some noxious compounds in the solution. The materials we need are a power supply around 12 volts. We need some leads to connect the power supply to the iron sacrificial anode, which is what I'll be using, and also, of course, the rusty iron piece that we're trying to clean up. We also need water and some sort of salt. I'm going to use bicarb, sodium bicarbonate, or you can also use salt. If you do use regular salt, you will release some chlorine gas, and that's something to take note of. The reactions that occur during electrolysis, and I broke this down between the cathode and the anode. So the cathode is a negative. We're going to have the rusting iron pieces there, and it's 2 iron oxides plus 12 hydrogens plus 12 electrons yields 4 Fe, regular iron. Again, we're converting iron oxide back into regular iron plus 6 waters. Some of those waters will react with loose electrons to produce H2, which is a hydrogen gas that comes off at the negative electrode, plus 2 hydroxide ions. At the anode, which is where oxidation is taking place, we're going to have 6 waters break down into 3 oxygens, which we'll see bubbling off of the this piece, plus 12 hydrogen ions plus 12 electrons. So the anode's giving off 12 electrons by being oxidized, and the iron oxide is gaining those 12 electrons, being reduced, which produces the metal. In our methods, this is a simple electrolysis setup. I'll have a tub of water. I'm going to put in the sodium bicarb, a couple tablespoons, which should be enough. And we have the sacrificial anode on this side again, which is the positive. where oxygen will be coming off. We have our rusty iron piece on this side, which we know is the railroad spike, and that's the negative lead, and that's where hydrogen will be coming off. And it's just a matter of waiting this out and checking your piece from time to time to make sure it's getting cleaned up properly. Okay, let's go ahead and do this electrolysis of that rusty railroad spike. All set up to do our rust removal using electrolysis. This is about a half gallon of water right here, and I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of sodium bicarb and just mix it around really well. This will be the electrolyte, of course. Everything has dissolved nicely. I'm going to turn on the power supply here, which is set to about 12 volts, 11.99, close enough. This is the rusty piece I'm not using a nail in this experiment. I'm using a railroad spike, and I started to kind of grind it off, and I thought this is going to be a lot of work. So we're going to do it with the electrolysis. This is the cathode, or the negative, that's going in here. And this right here is a spring from a notebook that I have. I don't even know how I ended up with this, but this will be the sacrificial anode that goes in, like so. They want to, of course, be separated. And to keep these wires, which are just a little bit like coiled up, I got a couple clips right here. So I'll put that one on right there, and this one on right there. Hooking up the negative here, or the cathode, to our iron object that is rusty. And of course, this is very simple for hooking up the positive to the sacrificial anode. I just love saying that. All right, here we go. Now it's going to take a second to start up, but you can already see bubbles starting to form there. And I'm going to periodically check on this, and I'll be back when it's done. Real quick, just to review this, at the anode, which is the positive side right here, we're losing electrons. Oxidation is occurring, and the bubbles, which you can barely see, but they're there, are oxygen. And at the cathode, the negative side right here, we're gaining electrons. It's being reduced, and that's hydrogen bubbles being produced right there. It's been just over an hour. Can't see anything anymore, so I'm going to just go down here and take a peek at this real quick. It's changed, but very little. This is going to take a little bit of time. You might have noticed I turned that up to 14 volts. I'm going to turn it up some more. The problem with increasing the voltage, although it does, of course, increase the process, is that with all the ions and electrons moving, you start to heat things up, and that makes it less efficient. But I'm going to go ahead and change this anyways. The water is still quite cold. Let's go up to about 16 volts here. Stop. So I'd soldered these thinking that might be the best way to do it, and I just, for kicks, thought I'd pick up the spring, and the solder broke off the wire. So I got to redo this, and I'll be back. Instead of soldering it again, I just hooked a clip. I'll try to show it to you here. Just a simple clamp. There you go. See that? And I clipped it here. And the reason I don't want to put these in is obvious. They're going to corrode a lot. So I just needed to find something else to get the power down to where it needed to be. So I'm going to turn this back on here, and we'll go ahead. But I am going to turn down the voltage, because I think part of the reason I needed to turn it up was that solder was breaking apart over time here. So we'll go back to 14 volts. It's been 3 hours since I actually started this, and in the meantime, I had to replace the second electrode. The solder broke. It's not the solder metal, it's the copper wire that's actually breaking off. So I put another clip on here. It seems to be working really well. The water got changed one time. Once this reaches about 2 amps here, it just stops working that well. So I changed it out, put in more sodium bicarb, and I'm going to keep going, but I haven't checked it in a while. So let's see what this actually looks like here. Gosh, that's actually starting to show. Not bad. All right, let's hope that clip doesn't come off there. Nope. It's been running 6 hours at this point, so I'm going to turn this off here. And I did take a peek at it earlier. This is no doubt much, much cleaner, and the water's starting to warm up. You can see that clearly if I bring this up, how much metal is actually showing. So I'm going to take this out, and whatever little bit that's left in there, I'm going to take a brush and just brush it off. I think we've got a lot of iron that is actually showing. That was from when I ground it earlier right there. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. This worked really well. And I have to take a peek at our quote-unquote sacrificial piece of metal. Look at how much shorter that is. That's why it's called a sacrificial anode. This tub sat overnight for around 12, 13 hours here, so I want to see, there's about 1/4 to 1/2 inch of this. I just want to see, yeah, it's super light, but A lot of material in there. Obviously, most of it's rusted, probably sloughed off from the railroad spike, and of course the spring dissolved about half of it. So, okay, just wanted to show you that. And one very real and very clean railroad spike. I brushed it with a wire brush just to get some of the surface stuff off, but look at this. I'm amazed. I mean, I want to put this on a piece of wood and make it for, like, I don't know, some kind of paperweight inside the house. This is so cool looking. Anyways, we're going to make it bleed. You now know how this turned out so nice, so let's go ahead and start with the actual experiment. As I start, there is a better order than others, and that would be first add the hydrochloric acid, just to dilute it out really well. Doesn't take much to mix that in. Next, we're going to add the potassium thiocyanate. Looks like it's completely dissolved. And lastly, the hydrogen peroxide. Done. And lastly, we're going to add our iron, where the Fe plus 2 is converted to Fe plus 3, which then combine with the thiocyanate to form FeSCN3 iron thiocyanate, which is red in color. It's really a simple experiment, but it's pretty neat. Out of curiosity, I've always wanted to take this out and see what it looks like. I'll tell you what, that really looks like blood. It's amazing how close that is to the real color of blood. And pretty much, of course, it's untouched. Simple experiment. Hope you enjoyed it.